Charlie Kirk's name was already a magnet for controversy, but when FBI agents uncovered the eerie scene of his death, an apartment scrubbed clean, surveillance cameras mysteriously blacked out, and encrypted files hinting at hidden enemies, it became clear that Charlie's final hours were part of a conspiracy darker than anyone imagined. Charlie Kirk's death shook the city in ways no one could have anticipated. On a cold, gray morning in March, his apartment door was discovered slightly ajar by a neighbor who had grown concerned after weeks of no contact. Inside, the scene was perplexing. Charlie lay lifeless on the living room floor, surrounded by his personal belongings, yet there were no signs of forced entry. The furniture was strangely disrupted, as if someone had rifled through the space searching for something specific, but nothing appeared to be stolen. His laptop sat open on the desk, its screen displaying a half-written note that seemed interrupted mid-thought. The air in the apartment carried a faint scent of chemicals that forensic teams would later identify as unusual cleaning agents, possibly used to obscure evidence. The arrival of the FBI only intensified the mystery. Agents noted that the building's security cameras had gone offline for nearly 2 hours the night before, a gap that coincided precisely with what investigators believed was the time of death. The fact that the outage was not accidental raised immediate suspicions that Charlie's killer had planned the crime with precision. Even the most experienced officers on the scene remarked on the eerie feeling that someone had been watching, waiting, and orchestrating events to perfection. It was a scene that spoke of intent rather than impulse. Neighbors described hearing nothing unusual the night of the incident, adding to the puzzle. Charlie had been a vocal figure in political circles, often courting controversy and criticism. While many dismissed his death as the consequence of his public life, the FBI was wary of assuming motive without clear evidence. Every item in the apartment was cataloged, every digital device analyzed, and yet each discovery only seemed to deepen the mystery. Early forensic reports revealed that the method of death was unusual, defying the conventional patterns typically seen in cases of homicide. Even more concerning were the encrypted files found on Charlie's computer. These files hinted at sensitive information and connections that were not immediately understandable. FBI cryptographers began working around the clock to decode the messages, hoping to uncover a motive or at least identify suspects. As the investigation continued, it became increasingly clear that Charlie Kirk's death was no ordinary case. The precision, secrecy, and unusual evidence pointed to something far more sinister, a planned act shrouded in conspiracy, where every detail seemed designed to confuse, mislead, and intimidate those who would seek the truth. The city held its breath, unaware that this was only the beginning of a complex and chilling investigation. The investigation moved quickly as FBI analysts began dissecting every digital trace left in Charlie Kirk's devices, and the results were anything but ordinary. Hidden behind layers of encryption were dozens of files containing fragments of coded messages, obscure symbols, and references to entities that didn't appear in any government database. Specialists in cyber forensics spent days just attempting to map the networks these files pointed toward, only to find themselves routed through servers in multiple countries and dead-end addresses that dissolved as soon as they were accessed. It was as though someone had designed a labyrinth specifically to waste time and mislead anyone brave enough to follow the trail. Every discovery led to more questions, creating a sense that the case was being manipulated by unseen forces. Agents reviewing Charlie's phone records uncovered late-night calls to numbers registered under false identities. These contacts seemed to vanish when investigators tried to track them down. One number pinged briefly in a remote part of Alaska before disappearing from the grid entirely. Another surfaced for seconds in a small European village and then went dark. Financial investigators found large but irregular transfers into accounts across the Caribbean and Eastern Europe, each routed through shell corporations with no legitimate business activity. The patterns hinted at deliberate planning, the kind that required both resources and discipline. Meanwhile, the physical evidence from the apartment offered few straightforward answers. Trace chemicals found in the air vents matched compounds used in industrial cleaning but were mixed with a rare additive usually reserved for high-end laboratories. Forensic scientists suggested it could have been used to destroy DNA or mask a presence that would otherwise be detectable. The apartment itself showed no forced entry, and the lock mechanisms displayed a level of tampering only achievable with specialized tools, leaving investigators to wonder how someone had entered and exited so cleanly. Public speculation exploded as rumors of secret political plots began circulating online. Commentators tied Charlie's work to shadowy organizations, some domestic, others foreign, each theory feeding the next. Inside the bureau, tension mounted. The agents sensed that every lead was part of a larger, carefully constructed puzzle designed to keep them chasing shadows. What had initially looked like a high-profile homicide was transforming into something far stranger, a case where technology, money, and hidden alliances intersected in a way none of them had encountered before. The sense of being watched, of every step being anticipated, became impossible to ignore, pushing the team deeper into a mystery that seemed to widen with each passing hour. Attention soon shifted from Charlie Kirk's digital trail to the people who had shared his life in the weeks leading up to his death. The FBI methodically interviewed friends, colleagues, and distant acquaintances, only to receive a confusing mix of stories that rarely aligned. Some described Charlie as a man consumed by a dangerous investigation of his own, convinced he had uncovered evidence of political corruption that reached far beyond national borders. Others painted him as reckless, chasing sensational theories for attention and bending facts to fit his own narrative. The inconsistency of these accounts only deepened the uncertainty surrounding his final days, making it difficult to separate paranoia from reality. Financial experts unearthed a series of offshore accounts linked to Charlie through a maze of shell companies. Each account contained large deposits from unknown sources, arriving at irregular intervals. No single transaction broke any laws on its own, but the overall pattern suggested a covert funding operation. Investigators followed the money to jurisdictions known for secrecy, only to be met with silence and vanished records. It was as if someone had anticipated every question and erased the answers before they could be found. The meticulous concealment hinted at a network with the resources to stay hidden indefinitely. As the team examined his movements, they discovered that Charlie had been shadowed for months. Surveillance footage from various cities showed the same unfamiliar figures appearing near him: a tall man in a gray coat, a woman carrying an unmarked black bag, a pair of strangers lingering at events where Charlie was scheduled to speak. Facial recognition software failed to identify any of them. Their presence was unmistakable, yet their identities remained beyond the reach of official databases, suggesting training or access to methods designed to defeat detection. Meanwhile, encrypted notes recovered from Charlie's personal drives revealed scattered thoughts about an unnamed organization and a project referred to only as the Grid. The fragments described a system of influence and data manipulation capable of shaping public opinion without detection. Analysts debated whether this was a genuine threat or the product of Charlie's imagination, but the specificity of the details made dismissal difficult. The public grew restless as speculation spread across social media. Online forums erupted with competing theories, some accusing foreign intelligence services, others claiming secret corporate interests were involved. For the investigators, the most chilling realization was that whoever had orchestrated Charlie Kirk's death seemed always one step ahead, aware of the Bureau's moves before they were even made. Each lead that appeared promising dissolved into another layer of uncertainty, leaving the team trapped in a widening web of secrets. Weeks stretched into months, and the investigation into Charlie Kirk's death grew more complicated with each passing day. Just when the FBI thought they were close to a breakthrough, an anonymous email arrived at the Bureau's secure tip line. The sender claimed to possess insider knowledge of a covert operation tied directly to Charlie's final days. The message was brief but filled with specific details: dates, locations, and obscure references that only someone close to the case could know. Forensic specialists traced the email's origin through layers of encryption, but every digital path ended in a dead server. The sender called themselves Specter, a name that became both a clue and a taunt to the team. The information revealed in the email hinted at the involvement of multiple private intelligence contractors operating outside government oversight. According to the tip, these groups were hired to monitor political activists, quietly gathering data and neutralizing perceived threats. Investigators cross-checked the claims and uncovered faint traces of contracts and payments hidden in financial networks usually reserved for military black operations. None of it was conclusive, but the consistency between the email and evidence already in hand suggested the whistleblower's claims were more than fantasy. Digital experts widened their search and uncovered a pattern of anonymous forum posts discussing Charlie's activities days before his death. The posts used code words that matched phrases found in his encrypted files, an eerie confirmation that someone had been tracking his every move. In one thread, users debated whether the target had been neutralized, a phrase that chilled even the most seasoned agents. Attempts to identify the posters led nowhere. The accounts disappeared within minutes of being flagged. At the same time, physical surveillance of key suspects yielded unsettling signs. Agents reported cars parked for hours near their own homes, unmarked drones hovering just beyond property lines, and unexplained power outages during sensitive briefings. It began to feel as though the investigators themselves were being hunted, their actions anticipated by an adversary with considerable resources. Internal security protocols tightened, but the sense of vulnerability lingered. Media coverage fed public fascination and paranoia. News outlets speculated on everything from foreign interference to secret government experiments, while online communities wove even wilder theories. For the agents on the ground, separating fact from fiction became nearly impossible. Each credible lead dissolved into a maze of deception, and every discovery only confirmed that a hidden force was steering the investigation off course, determined to keep the truth buried. Months after Charlie Kirk's death, the FBI compiled a final report, but even the most comprehensive effort could not fully untangle the threads of the case. Forensic breakthroughs had confirmed that he had been under surveillance for months, tracked through sophisticated methods that few private individuals could access. Tiny signal emitters, almost invisible to the naked eye, were discovered inside the wiring of his apartment and even within personal items like a wristwatch and a set of headphones. Specialists concluded these devices were capable of transmitting real-time data to distant servers, yet no trace of who deployed them could be found. The technology appeared custom-built, leaving investigators to wonder if the resources behind the operation belonged to a clandestine network rather than a single person. The anonymous whistleblower known as Specter never surfaced again. Attempts to lure them with coded responses or trace their previous messages failed. Analysts debated whether Specter had been silenced, compromised, or simply fulfilled a singular purpose. Internal memos reflected growing concern that the case itself had become a battleground for competing agendas, some within government, some entirely outside it. Each department maintained fragments of evidence, yet no single team possessed the full picture, creating a puzzle that resisted resolution. Public pressure mounted as conspiracy theories multiplied. Some commentators insisted that foreign intelligence agencies had orchestrated the killing to destabilize domestic politics. Others claimed powerful corporate entities wanted Charlie silenced before he could reveal damaging information. Every new article or online thread added another layer of speculation, making it nearly impossible for ordinary citizens to separate credible findings from invented drama. The narrative surrounding Charlie's death had escaped the confines of law enforcement, becoming a cultural phenomenon shaped as much by imagination as by fact. The FBI's closing statement acknowledged coordinated activity but avoided naming any suspects, citing a lack of conclusive evidence. Key witnesses remained missing, encrypted financial trails ended abruptly, and critical data appeared deliberately erased. Agents privately admitted that someone had anticipated their every move, staying several steps ahead until the very end. In quiet conversations, some wondered whether the true objective had never been to hide the crime, but to create confusion so profound that truth itself would become unreachable. Charlie Kirk's death ultimately stood as a chilling symbol of how power, secrecy, and technology can intertwine to obscure reality. The unanswered questions lingered like shadows over the city, a reminder that some mysteries are not solved, but absorbed into the collective uncertainty of those left behind.